So you can see 6-8 foot length of rope. I've got a loop or an eye tied into one end of it. I just fed the tail end back through itself so it wrapped around the tree and hooked onto it. And then I apply a marlin spike hitch with a little piece of wood, a little twig, to just have something to hook onto for the lash here. If I didn't have a loop that was on the top of my backpack, I could easily turn around and go with a larger piece of wood and just hook it onto the, arms, if you will, the shoulder straps of the bag instead. But this bag has a loop, so I just hook it onto there. So I've got a new ridge line that I've put together. I'll show you this in detail. It's one of my rapid ridge lines. I had made one and done a video about it previously with tarred bank line as the prusik loops. This time I've gone with just paracord. But I'll go in detail. I'll stop and kind of do a close-up of this and go in detail of exactly how this little setup works, and then I'll show it to you when it's up on the trees. So the thinking with these ridge lines is, I'll just loosen it off a bit so I can kind of show you the one end. It's the same on the opposite end too. So I've got a little stopper knot that sits on the end of the line, just a little overhand knot, nothing complex. And then I hook on a prusik loop, and that stopper knot is really just so if it hits the end it won't go over. And what I've done with these prusiks, I've just added one additional loop to ensure that they really hold on to the line firm, because they're going to be supporting a lot of tension. So, and then I attach a second prusik loop on the line, but this prusik loop's a little different. On the end of it, I tied on a little toggle. So the thinking really is you can adjust the size of this and hook it where you hook the toggle onto the loop, and that part wraps around the tree. And because it's on two prusiks, you can adjust the diameter that is needed to whatever size you need to go around the tree of varying sizes. And then if your line is a little too long of the distance between the two trees, you can easily just take up any slack by pulling on one end. So this allows me to set up ridge lines and take them down without having to tie any knots, and it makes it extremely rapid to actually go and set these up. So I'll do a close-up when it's with tension and that on the tree, so you can see this in exact detail, if you will. Just so you guys are aware, I'm in a holiday weekend where I'm at, and they're doing some big music festival off in the distance down in the valley. So if you guys hear any music in the background, it's not my gear, it's coming from the concerts and stuff they're doing. But either way, I'll just kind of carry on with my video. So like I say, I take my rope with the prusik loop and the prusik loop with the toggle on it, and really I just wrap the prusik loop one around the tree, and then I take the other prusik loop that has the toggle on it, I just feed the toggle through and make sure it's hooked on. I'm now strapped on to this tree. I could slide this along to make sure that it's tight to the tree if I chose to. I always like to leave a little bit slack because I just don't need it to be like that, but I'll run off and connect to the other tree, and you'll see that I've got the same kind of setup on the other side. And then all I have to do is, if the camera's catching this, all I have to do is this line on the other side, I pull any slack that's in the line tight, and the prusik loops will hold the tension, and I'll have a taut line in under a minute. So I'll set that a little bit, and then I'll just run off to my other tree. So the way I've spooled up my hank of rope when it comes to this ridge line, it's all rapid release. So even though it looks like it's in a bundle, hopefully I'm catching this on camera, even though it looks like it's in a bundle, as I pull, it'll just loosen itself off. I've got some prusiks on the line already set on, as you can see here is the first one, and that'll just come loose in the bundle. And I'll just run off simply to my other tree, come around the tree, that prusik back over where it can sit. So now you can see I've got a pile of slack line here. I'll just slide that down. I've got a pile of slack line here before I get to my other two pieces. So I simply just slide those two prusiks up along the line until I get close to the distance that I need. Now I know I'm going to need to have the prusik loop that has the toggle on the one side of the tree. So I'll simply just set it on that side. And the other prusik that it's going to hook onto, I'll try to do it from this side so the camera sees it better. I simply just hook the toggle into the prusik on this side, and then apply tension. So I can slide this now where when I apply tension, I just pull the slack, pull more tension, and then apply tension, and we're there. Ridgeline set. So you can see here, I can simply pull here and slide it that way to apply tension, or when I pull, I can slide the prusik on this side to apply tension. So either way, the two prusiks being tied against each other with the toggle and the loop is what holds everything and locks it in place. So I want that to be about 5 foot high at this point in time. So I'm going to set it as tight as I possibly can because I want a good I want a good tight ridgeline. And now that's very taut, and it's not going anywhere. So one of the really handy things about this kind of ridgeline setup is the flexibility you can get on either tree. So just to show you, I can loosen off some of the tension here when it comes to things. And just pop my prusik out. Adjust the height on the tree that I want it to sit if I was up too high, and then just reset things again. It makes it really, really easy. And this I'm doing with full tension. I'm still able to just set it to where I want it to be. You know, I could loosen it off fully here and have it have lots of slack and that kind of thing. But just to show you, I now dropped it a good 4 inches or so it's more square on my line. But either way, you can do that on either side very easily. So I just showed you on the other side, connecting to the other tree, exactly how I could do it when there was still tension being applied. On this side, I'll show you how you can easily loosen this off to adjust it. So there's a prusik that sits here with the toggle. I simply can just slide that back towards the tree, and it loosens right up. I now have the ability to turn around and adjust that at will, and then just set my prusik back tight again along the line. So it makes it very easily adjustable when it comes to on either side. If you feel like one part of the ridgeline is too high compared to the other, you can easily loosen it, retighten it again, that kind of thing. It's very flexible setup. And like I say, you don't have to tie any knots. You just have to hook a toggle onto a loop and pull. The end with the stopper knot, where this ridgeline didn't need the length, is just sitting down beside the tree. Any slack was pulled on the line, and that way I can have it be adjustable. The prusik here holds the tension of it, goes around the tree, hooks onto the other prusik, which has the toggle. They just hold on to each other as such, where you want to make sure that the tension is against the cordage, not against the toggle itself as much as possible, even though these toggles are pretty rock solid. And then I just have this little pull here, so if I wanted to pull this with my hand and free this off because something jammed or something happened where it got stuck, it just gives me the ability to do that. And then like I say, as I run along my line, I've got prusiks, and I've added in one additional loop. Normally prusiks have 3 loops. I do 4 just because paracord on paracord, you're using rope that's the same diameter. So when it comes to pulling, sometimes if you're using just 3 loops, it'll slide a little bit. If it's, if there's any type of slickness on the rope from anything, a little bit of oil or anything off your hand can cause it to just, slide as it applies the tension. In order to stop that, I just put one more loop onto it. And like I say, now I've got my prusik loop sitting on the ridgeline. There's one there. I've got my other one here. It's got the additional loop as well. And then the exact same configuration on this side, where the prusiks hook onto the toggles. Got the same little pull if I need to, just to help relieve some tension and free it up if it gets stuck. And then on this end, the stopper knot is actually right at the end because I didn't need to have any slack on this side. I just kept it all on the one side. You don't have to though. You could easily have a bit of slack on both ends. But to take it down and put it up is very rapid. You know, when I do this without having to do it with all the camera work and that, it takes me anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to actually set up a ridgeline at whatever height. And you can see it's a very taut line. There's definitely no slack to this line. As strong as you can pull on the feed line here to give it tension, and then just set your prusiks. The prusiks will lock it to whatever point you're at. So it really depends on your strength to how hard you can pull on this around the tree to how tight this will be. Get my tarp out at this point. So this is a 10-foot square, 3 meter by 3 meter, I think it is. AquaQuest tarp that I'll be using. I'll just cut an angle so you guys can see me hooking it up better. I'm going to set this up in a Adirondack style. So the thinking really is one of the corner points. I'm just going to feed over the center. The center tie-outs on the tarp. I'll just take a piece of wood. I'm going to take the center tie-out points along the sides of the square tarp. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to feed my prusik loop through that. Then I'm going to put a stick into it. Just set that side. Do the same on this side. Where I'm going to take the center point where the tie-out is. Grab another stick. I'll slide my prusik through that tie-out. Put a stick in, and then just apply tension to the prusiks. So you can see there's nothing complex at this point in time. This is the corner tie-out point on the tarp. If you picture the tarp as being square, at the halfway points, I just simply take the tie-out, I fed a prusik loop through the tie-out, and then just hook a stick into it. Gives it a way to kind of hold on to that tie-out point. Nothing complex. Peg out some back pieces. So off this tarp configuration, there's the corner here. I want to come in to the halfway point that's here, and I want to pull that 90 degrees to the tie-out point that I had on the ridgeline. So I'm just going to take one of my spikes, tent pegs if you will, feed that through my tie-out point. Try to avoid taking off that line if I can. There we go. And I just want to make sure it's nice and taut and set it in place. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Exact same configuration. Come into the halfway point. I want to make sure it's 90 degree to here and 90 degree to there, so it's nice and tight as best I can. I just want to set that in place as well. Now for the sides, same kind of thing. I'll take my now corner, I'm going to tie that out, and I want it to be taut every way I can, if you will. It'll come out on the 45 a bit, that's fine. But I want it to be taut to the ridgeline, and I want to be taut to that back corner. You can do the same on the other side. So we can do the same on this side. I want to pull it out and have it be taut to the ridgeline and taut to that back edge. Okay, so on the corner end, which is now becoming my roof, as you can see, there's only a 6 or 8 foot length of tie-out that's on here. So I've got an additional line that's in my bag. I'm going to hook off to one of these trees and then come back to join onto this, just to make sure that I can keep it at a nice and elevated height where it's, you know, easy to get in and out of this thing. So I'll just grab my hank rope and then cut back. So like I say, just got a hank of rope. It's got a loop on one end. It's about 20 foot length or so. I'm just going to hook this around this tree. Feed the hank back through itself just so it sets on through that loop. And now I'm just going to pull out. This one has a few prusiks on it and that, but that's okay. So really, nothing complex. Like I say, it's just more to extend my ridge, or to extend my tie-out line than anything. Okay, so even though I had a tie-out line on this corner piece, I just tried this knot and see if I had enough length, and I did. So now I'll just kind of undo it and show you exactly what I've done here. So the thinking really was, I hooked my line that was coming off the tree. I just hooked that through the tie-out point. And I come around now. I'm going to make a loop in the line as such. I'm going to wrap it 3 times around. And when the 3rd time comes around, I just kind of hold it up as such. I take the end, feed it through. Don't feed it all the way through though, just let it be a bite in the line. And then when I apply tension to this line now, that knot will just tighten up on itself. The good part about this knot is that it'll hold tension just like a prusik would. As soon as you kind of release tension and slide it along the line, you can do so. You know, but as soon as you let go and the tension hooks, it'll hold. And like I say, if you want to have it where this all comes free, you simply just pull that out and the whole knot comes off the line and you're free again. So I'll just show that one more time. This is a modified farrimond hitch. Normally a farrimond hitch, they go around twice. I always like to do it the 3rd time, just to ensure that it has extra grip on the line. Like I say, I just feed it through, kind of set the tension. The knot's in place now, and now you can just slide it along that line and apply tension as much as needed, and it'll just hold. Hopefully the camera's managing to catch that okay, but it'll just hold like that now. So now if you're worried at all that this is going to come loose for some reason, it's easy enough. You just take a stick, stick it into the loop that's hanging there, and just pull it tight. That'll ensure that this knot doesn't come loose on you. It's just a way to kind of safety it, right? Nothing complex. If you want to take it off, you pull back on the stick a bit, it'll loosen that loop off, and then you just pull the stick out and pull it and you're gone. But this is a good way to make adjustable lines without getting in all sorts of fancy gear. Just use a good knot, right? Okay, so I got the basics of the shelter together pretty well now. I gotta clean up a few little plants that are growing inside it and that kind of thing, and just kind of make sure that the ground is, you know, cleaned out inside there. But really, this is a very open shelter. If I used holes to ensure that these were exactly 5 foot up into the air, I could square these corners and have the 2 sides come right in so it was 90 degrees. Given how warm it is in the environment I'm in, I'm in the high 20s, low 30s Celsius in the environment I'm in right now. So I'm not worried about stopping breezes. If anything, I wouldn't mind having them flow through. This is really more just if a sprinkle of rain or anything comes, I've got something to kind of keep it off. Or if any debris is falling from the trees above, it's just some way to kind of keep those off me. So I've left it open, and I didn't bother putting the poles in place to ensure that I had those 90s. But this is the Adirondack shelter, if you will. This setup's fairly quick and easy. There's not much to it. There's a central tie-out point here, which I'll tie out here in a few minutes, that can give me an additional bit of space. I don't even know. I'm debating on whether I'm even going to bother tying it out or not, to be quite honest. But you can tie that out and pull it out where it'll give a bit more shoulder room and headroom inside the shelter when you're in here. But like I say, there's ample room in here. I'm 6 foot tall, 220 pounds, You know, I'm reaching full length. I've got lots of room. I've got overhead protection, that kind of thing. I can move back further into the shelter. It's really, it's a good setup for if you know you're not worried about bad weather. You know, I've done other videos where I've done shelters that have closed doors and those types of things. I'm in a rainforest environment in the area that I'm in. We see a lot of wind and rain in these environments in the spring, winter, fall, those types of seasons. But right now we're in peak summer, so it's super warm. Want to have it be open and airy. I've done a few raised bed videos and stuff in the past, so I just wanted to kind of go back to being on the ground again. And either way, the shelter's up and the ridgeline is, you know, set and that type of thing. So I'll move on to the next part of the video. There we go. So like I say, I could easily tie out that center point now in the back just to give me some extra shoulder and head space. But given that I'm by myself, I just don't feel there's really a high enough need to do that. There's ample room in there for me at this point in time. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different look, if you will. Looks a little sloppy compared to, you know, the purest version of one of these tarp shelters, but when you're setting up, quite often, as you can see by the forest floor, it's not always the most even terrain. So, you know, when you set these things up, if I put in a 5-foot pole right at these points to ensure that this stayed at exactly 5 foot, then from that point down to there would have created more of a straight walled 90-degree angle fit. But when you're out in the bush and you set these things up, you know, they just kind of take natural shape to the terrain you're on one way or the other. So, you know, I just didn't feel that it was needed given the amount of space. As you can see, there's quite a bit of room in there. I'll kind of go in and look from this perspective outwards. Even when it comes to, here, I'll sit on my stool. Even when it comes to the headroom and everything else of my hat's just grazing the top of the tarp, if you will. But there's ample enough room. I'll stretch my hand straight out. I'm still not touching the end of where the tarp is. You know, it gives me a nice little awning and that kind of stuff. The space in here is definitely ample enough to put in, you know, a ground pad or some sort of mat, if you will, so you can get up off the dirt. But there's definitely plenty of room in here. I wouldn't necessarily want to use this as being my extreme bad weather shelter. This is more of a fair weather shelter in my perspective. But it is really simple to set up, and it's very open given that I'm only using a 10 foot by 10 foot tarp. It does still create a fairly significant sized sheltered environment. So, like I say, I've got lots of other things I want to show in this video, so I'll just cut and maybe I'll make myself a coffee at this point. Okay. So I'm just going to use an alcohol stove to get the coffee going today. So I've got my alcohol stove here. Just going to top it up with a bit more fuel. I've just got to throw the ferro rod spark into it. Make sure that's sitting a little more level than it was. Just use the back of my saw blade and the ferro rod. There we go. And I just got to give these alcohol stoves a couple minutes to prime and get the bloom going on the little vent holes. They always take a minute or so to just kind of do what they need to do. So while that's going, just grab my pot. Something's moving in the tree line back there. That's okay. there. I'm being lazy today when it comes to my coffee. I've got little pre-made packets, got the cream, sugar, and everything else into them. I'm just going to use those today. Keep it simple. Say there's other things I want to do in this video, but I'm just going to throw my coffee on. Like say when this comes to a bloom, I'll just set it on, bring it to a boil. Nothing much more to see than that. So as a status update, so I had this Trangia stove, I think that's what they call them, and then trying out a different stove. I thought this had a higher level of capacitance, so it might be better for me, but I ended up switching back over to my Vargo stove. I found even when the alcohol bloomed in this stove, it would easily extinguish the flame, and it just wasn't suitable enough to me. So I've switched back to the Vargo, which I don't really find ideal. You know, to be quite honest, I find the cat can stoves have been the best performers out of all of these things so far. So, just a little side update, if you will. So I was lucky enough to find myself a log that somebody cut in the past, and just use that as a little table. And I didn't do the recording of it, but I fast lashed together a tripod a little earlier in the video just to put my camera on, to lift my camera up and give me better angles. I'll do another one. There's some twigs over here, branches or whatever, that are over in this area. I'm sure I can salvage something out of this pile and put together a second tripod, just so I've got one for the camera and one for the fire. Okay, so I found 3 half-decent sticks, and I've got a loop of rope. I double it up on itself, take my 3 sticks, I just put all 3 of them hooked onto the doubled up rope, and I take whichever one ends up being the middle stick and just rotating it so it hooks on the rope and tightens it up. And the thinking really is I'll just keep looping that around. See if I can step back a bit so the camera catches it better. And just keep looping it around and around, and just do it until you feel those loops start to tighten up. Okay. I'm at the point now where it's getting hard for those loops to go any further, and it lets me know, alright, the tripod's ready to go. So this is just a flimsy little one compared to the other one. It was just made out of better sticks. So I'll switch it up and I'll use this for the camera, and I'll use the larger one to do the fire on, just because it's stronger and better. This one doesn't need to carry any weight really, it just needs to hold the weight of the camera. So, but that's just that simple to throw a tripod together. There's a reason why I carry lots of these little loops. They're handy for doing a ton of different things when you're out here. But yeah, you can see you don't have to go through all the formal process like most people would for lashing and frapping and, you know, nonsense. This is 10 times faster and uses way less rope, and you can get your rope back at the end of it. So, and you can see it just becomes like a jumbled mess, if you will, but it's effective. I've built tripods that were large enough to hook on bushcraft chairs, doing the exact same method. Instead of doubling the cordage up on itself and making, you know, 2 loops, if you will, I just used 2 separate loops altogether to do the larger scale ones, and it was amply strong enough to hold on to me and, you know, my 230 pound weight, no problems. So like I said, you know, when it comes to the conventional lashings you would do to lash a tripod together, to me, using these types of methods make that obsolete. I use these in lots of my videos. I build tripods for all sorts of different things, and this I couldn't even see going back to doing things the old way. This way is just way better. So you can see the camp starting to come together. I think that's roughly where I'm going to be setting the tripod when it comes to, you know, the fire and that kind of thing. I still got to clear it out so that there's no debris down below it. I've got to put out my bedding, that kind of stuff. There is another little side project that I want to do in this video, kind of keeping it a surprise up to this point in time, but, you know, I do want to kind of get my camp set up so I can move on to the secondary project and then show you guys that. So stay tuned, there's more coming. So I really just want to clear out an area where I make sure that nothing that would be like equal to a small tinder is going to easily ignite near my fire. So the easiest way to do that is just to get down to the dirt and clear out a half decent sized area where you know that the flames aren't just going to easily scorch any of the living matter around you. I put that off to the side in a little pile, and tomorrow morning when I pull up camp and that type of thing, I'll push all that matter back over this dirt cleared spot, if you will, and make sure that it looks like I was never even here. Okay, so now I'm going to take some dry sticks that I found on the forest floor. I'm going to break them into about a foot, foot and a half lengths, and I want to just make a bed of those and set them as tight as I can to each other. So the thinking for this is really, when you go to start your fire, you want to have your fire raised up off this damp earth that's down below. The easiest way to do that is just by setting out a bed of wood. So this will all do twofold things really. It'll help keep the fire up off the moisture in the earth to start with, and it'll also allow oxygen to get in underneath and help feed the fire when it first gets started. This little trick just makes getting a fire going a little bit easier. So I'll grab some more twigs and kind of widen this out a bit, and just make sure that it's all dry, and I'll know exactly where my fire is going to be set for later on. So you can see there's nothing fancy here. Just a couple dry sticks, make a little bed of them. Okay, so people that have watched previous videos of mine know that, sleep bag, I'll just set that aside, that I carry 6.5 foot by about 2.5 wide tube of fabric. It's just fabric that I've sewn together into a tube shape. So the debris that I pulled off the fire, I'm going to pick the sticks out of that so that there's no sharp edges or anything. But there's a lot of insulative quality to the material that I just loosened off the forest floor. So I'm going to stuff that in here and to turn it into my ground pad. So you can see it's a lot of kind of loose material now. I'll pick out all the large twigs, and I really just want to filter it down to this kind of airy, half plant, half dirt stuff. And like I say, anything that I know that runs risk of puncturing this tarp at all, I just want to remove from the equation. I'll walk through this entire pile, and then I'll stuff it into the bag just to make a mattress, if you will. If there's not enough material, potentially I'll harvest some of the local fern in the area and put that in as well to help just kind of add to it, yes? You don't really want to wear gloves, even though it's counterintuitive, because you don't want to, get your hands in the dirt. But you want to be able to feel for things as you're going through the dirt, If there's anything in it, like I say, little sticks and stuff, right? Having the, bare hands helps me find anything that's going to be in there that's going to cause a problem and remove it. If you were wearing gloves, you just wouldn't have that level of sensitivity. So, needless to say, just going through the entire pack, or entire mound. After going through the debris that I pulled to make my fire pit, all this wood, I don't know, hopefully the camera is getting the detail of it, but all of this wood just got pulled out, potentially sharp edges that are going to poke through things. And all I'm going to do is really just fire this stuff in there and kind of give one last eyeball. If I see anything that's, pinky sized or bigger, it's got to come out of the pile, right? And everything else won't have the strength to puncture this tarp. This tarp is really strong material to begin with. I'm really, to be quite honest, not worried about it. But it's better to be safe than sorry, right? You don't want to do damage to any of your gear. But now I'm just going to walk through it kind of as a second pass and tossing it into here as I go. Because it's a tube of fabric, I'll just kind of hook both ends, and this becomes a layer of kind of puffy trapped air, if you will, ideal for insulative material. Even though it's wet, the moisture isn't going to affect you really. That's, especially where I am right now. It's super warm, but either way, this is kind of a dirty trick to give yourself a mattress off making your fire. And like I say, I definitely want to make sure anything that's bigger than a pinky size is out of the equation. So I'll just keep doing this until the little pile has been dealt with, and then I'll go set it out as the bedding, and we'll see if I need to gather up a bit more fern or not. Need a little bit more debris. I could slide by with this. Right now it's about 2.5 inches thick off the ground or so, but it's only covering an area. Let me just feel my way around it. About that big. So I definitely need a bit more material in there just to make it more even. And so I'll harvest some of the fern in the area. There's plenty of them. I'm not worried about making a shortage of them. And stuff them in there as well, just to add to the insulation. So really, off any given one of these ferns, I don't want to harvest every fern. I definitely want to leave some. I don't want to have these plants die, but I know that you can harvest a couple of their leaves, if you will, and there won't be a problem. So just use my knife, punch together about half out of the pile, and just chop through them and take them. There's a twig in there. And I'll do that off of plants all through, and just harvest a bundle and set it into my mattress. Got lots up there. Okay. Now you can see in a matter of seconds I've already harvested a half decent little pile. I've got to grab more obviously, but it shows you how rapid that you can kind of gather these materials with just a knife. Okay, so I managed to fill up the mattress with some ferns and dirt and that type of thing. It's not perfect. I could even use a couple more little piles, but I don't want to harvest too much off here. And I don't mind even if I have 2/3 length sleep pad, if you will. It's good enough for me. My lower half doesn't normally have a problem, especially if I pass out with boots on, which I normally hate doing, but that just makes sure I stay warm on my feet. But either way, the mattress is going to be where it is now. Gives you an idea of the fact that how simple it was to kind of fill that. And it gives you the insulative quality to get up off the ground. So I'll pull up my sleeping bag and kind of toss that on there. That'll be kind of the sleep system for tonight, I think. I know it's open and exposed compared to some of the previous shelters I've done, but that's exactly what I want in the heat I'm in right now. I want the air moving and that kind of stuff. And we're in prime bear time now, and the area I'm in has lots of them. So I definitely want to be able to keep my eyes peeled a little more than I would inside a closed door shelter. It's just the nature of where I am. So either way, I'll kind of cut scenes here, kick back over once the sleeping bag's set on, and then hopefully we'll move on to the other project I want to show you. Alright, well, as you can see, home sweet home. This looks fairly comfortable for me. Shouldn't be too bad. I'm worried a little bit about there's a piece of tree stump that goes through, but it goes lighter underneath the mattress itself than you're seeing it on the camera out here. So hopefully that doesn't become a problem, but either way, this is where I'm sleeping, so it is what it is. Okay, so we got 2 more tent pegs. They're nice and long. This type of terrain, the land is soft, so I can go fairly deep, which is to my advantage with this here. So I'm going to come off this tree here, which is about shoulder width in width, and I'm going to about 10 foot out, 8-10 foot out from it, I'm going to put in these tent pegs on a good 45-degree angle. I want them to really hold on tight. I don't want them in all the way yet. I'll do that right near the end. So, and then I'll come out about the width of, maybe even a little bit more, the width of the tree. Go in again now with the second tent peg. Like I say, still a little bit of room. So now I'm going to want to take my cordage. Let's see which one I got as a bigger hank. There's a bigger hank. So I'll take my cordage, I'll cut scenes here, and I'll show you the next step. So I'm going to take the loop or the eye of the rope that I've got on the one end. I'm just going to hook it right onto that tent peg. I'm going to come up. I want to come up fairly high. And I definitely don't want to hook in that other piece of rope off the ridgeline, but I want to come up on, you know, the better part of a 45, maybe 50-degree angle. And I want to make sure that's on there fairly taut. one out of the way. Now I want to come back out. Good, there's a couple prusiks on there, good. I want to come back out now and hook onto this one. I'm just going to temporarily tie that off for a second. Okay, so now that I've got the loop hooked onto the one tent peg, I'll just set that right in deep. This one, like I said, really just did a half-ass knot to begin with here to hold it, because that same knot we used earlier on the roof of the tarp setup, the shelter setup, we're going to use that exact same knot here again. It's really an ideal candidate for use in these types of situations. I want to just feed the loose end through itself, set the bite, and apply tension just like we went through earlier in the video. So when I feel that's half decently taut, I want to make sure this tent peg's fully into the ground. There's no room to wiggle. Now I'm going to try to make sure that the tension on this one and this one is as tight as it can be. So I'm going to kind of jimmy around with the rope on the tree and try to get any loose on this side over to here and then tighten it off from this knot. So I'm not going to show that because it's not very elegant filming, but either way, that's what I'll do to make sure that there's good tension on both of these. Okay, so I've taken all the loose slack off the line as best I could, so both sides are tight. This side's still a bit tighter, but it is what it is. I tried as hard as I could to get that, but I might come up with a different knot setup next time to apply tension to this side equally. But as you can see, that modified farrimond hitch, I just put a stick into it to ensure that it's locked in place. And I've got a couple prusiks on the line here. I got 3 of them. I'm going to take one of these and put them over on the other side. Okay, so we'll attach the prusik onto this side. So I take this loop of cordage, put it on the line, and kind of, you want it to go to the inside, the actual finished loop. Get a bit of binding there, hold on. So you want to kind of always take the wraps and come around the outside of it. And then once you've gone around 3 times, you just kind of pull the whole thing tight. You might have to straighten out a bit of how the ropes lay. So now I've got 3. If I want to make it even more secure, I simply just wrap it one more time around. It's still, you know, pretty well a prusik, just a modified prusik. And then it just ensures that it doesn't slide up and down the line. But now we've got a prusik on this side, and we've got 2 on this side. I only need 1 really on that side. And then I'll move on to the next step now. Got this other smaller anchor rope that I had. So this anchor rope, it's got a large loop or eye on the one end. Just going to hook that onto the prusik, feed the hank back through itself, and just kind of set that knot. Now that's on the line. Now, if you haven't guessed so far, I'm building like a table style surface here. So I have to decide on how high I want that to be. And by doing that, I just adjust where that prusik loop is going to sit on the line before I bite. So right there is about just underneath hip high. And I might even come up a little bit further. Make it about hip high. Now I'm going to come back around the tree. I'm going to apply a significant amount of tension, and I'm going to want to make sure that that's as level as I can get it. You know, it's obviously just by the eye, but as level as I can get it. I want to hook through the prusik on this side and make sure that that prusik is sitting at about the same point on the line in height on the main kind of support lines. So that allows me to figure out a relatively level space. So now it's as simple, or it can be as simple, as just cinching it down and kind of giving a little half hitch. Nothing fancy here. Doesn't have to be. I can reinforce that with a small toggle stick. Just to make sure that that knot doesn't come loose. And that keeps that secure so that's not going to come loose. Now I just want to lay, and there's tons of twigs around here, I want to lay a bed of twigs right across on this plane, if you will. I'm really just gathering up sticks that are, 2 foot or so, and I start off right where the 2 prusiks meet, and I just want to find ones that are big enough to reach across that gap, and just keep going. Any of the surplus I want to stick out on the side I'm on, because this is a dead side I'm not going to be walking through, so I don't even have to break these sticks to make them all to length. I just want to make sure that the other side is on enough where if it slips a little bit, it's not just going to slip right off and lose any support that it's giving. So I'm just going to go through and find a bunch of sticks in the area and kind of fill this up. Okay, so you can see this took about 5 minutes to just go gather some broken branches sitting on the forest floor. It didn't take any length of time. What I've realized though is I really should have doubled up the support rope just to give it more tensile strength, and that way it could support it more levelly. And then what I'm seeing is there's kind of a bow to the cordage just from the weight of the wood sitting onto it. That was a little bit more than I had anticipated. But either way, I think I'll harvest off some ferns, because like I say, there's tons of them around here, and I'll just lay that as a bed on top of this to kind of give it a flatter, more kind of natural tabletop. So, and then less than 5 minutes later, I've gone and harvested some of the ferns and just thrown them as a bed on top. It now creates a table. Now that took far less than half an hour to assemble this. It's maybe 15-20 minutes tops, but it allowed me to have a place to get up off the ground where I can set things that's, clean within reason. I mean, these ferns aren't, hygienically sound or whatever, but it's probably one of the cleanest tabletops you're going to find from nature out in this environment. So yeah, either way, there you have it, a floating table. So there you have it. The camp's pretty well come to completion for the basic part of its kind of main projects that I wanted to do. You can see that table works out well. It gives me a large enough surface area. I set a bunch of stuff on there. Water, hat, a bunch of cooking pots and everything else. Just a simple way to get up off the ground, really. With the stool now in combination, if I set up right near there, I've got a comfort zone I can work with. Okay, so I've got a couple prusiks on the line here. I'm just going to take one of the prusiks. I'm going to make like a lark's head into it. Just kind of set it into itself. Sorry, hard to do on this angle. And just hook on a piece of wood. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Just create a little lark's head. And set that in. You can put those out to a distance if you wanted. And really, it just gives me a place where I can hang up my jacket. Allows it to stay open so it can kind of air out a bit. Simple enough, easy peasy. Okay, so I've got a dead fallen tree in front of me. These are ideal places to find yourself some dry tinder. Now this tree's been dead for a while. I get small branches, really small ones. I'm just going to harvest that easily by just snapping them off the dead branch. I know that this stuff is dry, it's sitting up floating in the air. Even if there was a bit of rain, it's fine. This stuff, all in all, will take like a match. So I'll just haul out a couple handfuls of this stuff. Make sure that I've got enough to kind of get a tinder bundle going and that kind of stuff. So you can see I've gathered up a small bundle of twigs off of that fallen tree. I'm now going to separate that into two categories, two separate piles if you will. Everything below the size of a pencil and everything above, and I'm just going to break it into two separate groups. So you can see now, I just took that little pile, separated it into two separate bundles. One here, the smalls, and the other one more of the mediums if you will. So I'm going to need more of the larger twigs. So I'm going to go harvest off that dead tree more of the larger ones, and if I gather up a few more incidental small ones, that's fine, but that'll be enough to get me going for the smalls. I just need more larger wood now. Okay, so as you can see, the piles have kind of fattened out a bit. I've got to move up to larger wood now, so we're beyond twigs and that kind of stuff. I'm going to see if I can find some dead branches that are fair size. There's a couple that I cleaned off when I took these smaller pieces, but let's see if I can find something that I can kind of break into more fuel wood, if you will. Okay, so I found two trees that are growing close to each other. Let's see if I can just snap this with leverage. Makes it a lot easier than having to use an axe or a saw to give me pieces of wood that are good fuel size. Just saves a lot of time and energy. I actually have to use the saw here. I'm trying to be lazy about it. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So the thinking really is, this last log, it's getting thicker as I go. So this, as I get closer to this end, it's getting thicker and the leverage is becoming less. So in order to remedy that, I'm just going to stop, put my piece of wood into a plumber's vise, cut into it about halfway or so. I don't want to bother doing all the work of it. It's always about saving calories. Put that back in, figure out where the wood is, the break point. And it breaks just that easy. It's going to make me a liar now because the bark's sticking to itself. But if you feel like you're not getting the leverage on the tree, just cut a little line into it. Allows you to kind of break it into more manageable sizes. So I've got to do that with the other log just to kind of get some firewood built up. Okay, so now I'm going to just baton down a bit of wood. And the transition wood. I'm right into a knot here. But either way, going in. The knots all through it. There. Always the fun pieces, right? Either way, just make some kind of smaller large wood, if you will. With enough force, anything's possible. So I'll quarter up some of the larger pieces and stuff to kind of just wrap up my wood processing. And then we'll move on to the actual getting the fire going. Okay, so I got the better part of the wood process now. I think I've got enough to kind of get me through the first couple hours of the sun being down. It is summertime, so the sun doesn't go down until about 9:30 or so. Realistically, I'll be sleeping probably by 11:30. So I only need 2 hours in the dark, but either way, I think I get enough wood to cook off dinner, have a couple hours in the dark of some fire, and there you have it. Okay, so I'll just get my grill out now. Like I say, the place where you normally put the bladder bag, I just carry my grill there. Got a cutting board in here as well. I use them so frequently, and I use the bladder bag so infrequently, I decided that that was a better use of that space. So I'll just hang up my grill and get that going. So starting the fire this time will be a truly gentleman's treat. When it comes to this material, doing domestic duties at home never became so joyous. Your partner will think you're fantastic if you clean out the lint catch in the dryer. If you store that lint into a container and build it up and get it ready for these kinds of good days, then you've set yourself up for two positive perspectives. One, you were the man of the house, cleaning, taking care of home duties. And then when you come out into the field, you were the man of the field, because these lint balls can take a strike from a ferro rod very, very easily. And they will burst into flames and hold a flame for a period of 20 to 30 seconds at least, if you're lucky, more. If you use this as a wise man, in combination with fatwood. You see, fatwood isn't just regular wood. It would appear so, but it has an orange hue to it. And this orange hue comes from when pine trees fall, the dead trunks that sit into the ground have the resins build up in them, and it becomes this beautiful piece of wood. If you splinter this piece of wood with your knife into small pieces, even if you burned it whole, the size it's at right now, a fair size, you would find that they burn like a candle. And given the fact that they burn like a candle, it'll hold the flame for 10 or 15 minutes without any real efforts. So if you then take your small bundle of twigs that you gathered and you warm and heat them over top of these burning candles, if you will find that the fire will inevitably catch, even if that material right there is wet. So not only will you be the hero of the home, but you will also be the hero of the field. So this truly will be a gentleman's way of making a fire. These are my fatwood pieces, being broken down to give them more surface area to just burn even easier. Let's get the fire started, shall we? So I will take my lint pile, and remember, gentlemen, big ferro rods create big sparks. That's all I have to say about that. So we're going to want to take a healthy portion of lint to show our sweeter half how good of a cleaner we have been by the pile we've taken, but also to make it far easier to make your fire going. So you want to create a nice large pile where you couldn't miss with the spark of the ferro rod if you tried. I'm going to take the back of my saw. It has a good 90-degree spine with a high carbon steel. And as you can see, off a single strike, the lint will start to go, which gives you enough time to get your fatwood burning with ease. And like I say, the fatwood will start to burn like a candle. That will easily go for 10-15 minutes if left alone with nothing else. Simply hover your twig pile over top of the flames to ensure that you're drying out these twigs if there is moisture into them. And when you feel it's confident enough that you can set it down without it putting the fire out, take all the twigs in the area and just pile them on and let them cook and dry. I'll take my ferro rod back out of there. You can see the moisture in the wood. It's creating this white smoke. When the wood gets dry, that won't happen nearly as much. So you can see it's burning well now, and it's really just drying out all of that moisture in those twigs. Now that the flame has come above the point of the top though, you can start adding on the smaller of the next size up in sticks and start piling them onto the fire so that they get heat and they dry out. As you can see, it turned dark in color and the flame no longer is really pushing out through the top strong. Wait for a minute, let that build up more heat. When you see it push across the top, you know it's safe to add more. All the while underneath, that fatwood is still burning to ensure that everything stays and does well for you. So you can see that the flames haven't come above the pile again yet. So now I just have to wait. There's a lot of moisture in this wood. You can see the whiteness is almost blinding. So this is where you stop and you just let the heat build and dry out the wood for another minute or two. Once we move up to the larger pieces of wood, everything should be fine and stuff starts to stabilize. But you have to get up to that point. So you might even feel impatient at this point in time. But as you can see, inevitably the white smoke starts to become a little bit thinner and the flame starts to come up through the middle of the pile. That's exactly what you want to see. It's safe now to add on other bigger pieces that you know are wet too. Now I'm starting to move up to the quartered wood I had and the largest of the twigs I had. They're still fairly easy to dry out and get burning. And I'll just start to move up now to my quartered pieces of my main fuel wood that I'll be using. They're not even necessarily falling into the flame yet. They're just going to dry any moisture out of them that's in them. Like I say, I can stop now again for a few minutes. Let the heat build into it. That wood has to see the flames rise above it before you'd even think about adding on more. You can pause it once it hits a certain point and just kind of sustain the flame when you know that there's a big enough ember base in the bottom of it to kind of just keep everything going. So I'm going to take one of my larger pieces of wood and I'm going to let that dry. And it's the smallest one I had. So you can see I just turned the camera off for a minute and turned it back on just to let the heat build. It takes a few minutes for this to kind of come up now. And you're only just now starting to see the flame come up over the top of the rest of the wood. And potentially this is a point I could add on more, but I can hear the moisture in the wood hissing out. So I'm just going to let it go for another couple minutes before I add on another bigger piece. So, and as you can see, gentlemen, the fire is easily achieved. The woman is delighted that you've done something in housework, and you're a hero at camping. Like I say, you can see the white of the smoke starting to calm down now as the wood's dry now. It's exactly what you want to see. Just means it'll burn better. Just gonna stop and get myself a bit of water here. But hopefully, for you gentlemen out there that are willing to do some domestic duties, you can see how good it is. So nothing fancy today, just having a steak and a bun. Okay, well the best part of the day is here. Managed to get the steak on the fire. That's always a good sign. And as you can see, I don't know, hopefully the camera's picking it up. Starting to see a fairly significant orange hue coming out of the base of the fire. You can see that coal bed starting to build. I'll push in all those smaller sticks to make sure that they help feed that and fuel it. And then we should be on to just purely larger pieces of wood entirely. So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. Thanks for tuning in to another one of my bushcraft adventures. I hope you enjoyed the tarp setup I did. I know it was fairly simple, but kind of an alternative to a lean-to that I enjoy. And I really hope you enjoyed the floating table here. You know, it didn't take me very long to make. It didn't take a lot of resources, and the resources it did take were readily available. You know, I had this together in well less than an hour's time. But the usefulness it gives me to have a floating surface that's a raised platform is, you know, it's fantastic. So I'm going to cut the video short now of flip my steak and start to get my dinner into me and that kind of thing. I'll throw in a few more scenes like I normally do at the end of the video, but if you enjoy this type of content, like, share, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Cheers. So you can see the ember bed has built up a fair amount in the fire now, right in this area. You know, that dark orange color, that really emits a lot of heat. You know, it's nice to have fires that burn and throw off big flames and everything, and they brighten up the environment, but they're really, you know, light spectrum stuff. When it comes to the embers and the coal base in the bottom, you really want to have that built up for the heat.